Welcome, everyone. My name's Debbie Green Miller, and I produce the Rancho Mirage Writers Festival. Thank you. I want to welcome you all here today. And think about this. Have you ever had a vision of something fabulous? Not sure whether you can pull it off or not. Well, our community's lucky enough to have had a visionary and a partner who was so supportive in that vision that between the two of them, we've created the Rancho Mirage Writers Festival. Please help me welcome Helene Galen and Jamie Kabler. I want to thank Councilmember Steve Downs, his wife Jerry, and Councilmember Ted Weil. I don't know if you all realize this, but we are a City of Rancho Mirage partnered event. And without the city, their support staff, we could never do what we do today all through the year and at the festival. So thank you very much. If you weren't lucky enough to get a book today, I'm sorry, but the good news is there's more on sale in the back. So Follett bookstores here, and they'll be glad to sell you a copy of Amy's current book and her first book, both of which are great reads. We call the Writers' Festival Coachella for the Brain. And with this week's events, Coachella for the Brain, think about it. So it has been a brain fest with 3 events this week. We're going to give all of your brains the week off next week, as the city's going to be having the library's going to be having their annual book sale in this room. Great deals on books, so come and visit us then. However, November 7th, your brains are going to get put back to work. We have Jeffrey Frank coming on Monday, November 7th, to talk about his book on Harry Truman. He's going to be in conversation with Doug Miller, my husband. I think you'll like that. And the following day, he's doing a presentation on his other book, Ike and Dick. Later in the week, on November 10th, we have James Burrows, who directed Friends, Cheers, Taxi, and Will and Grace. He's going to be here in conversation with the Desert's own David Lee, who wrote Cheers and Frasier. So I know that's going to be a great event. If you need more information, just go to our website, rmwritersfest.org. Now for today's program. Amy Odell is a veteran fashion and culture journalist. She started as a freelance reporter for New York Magazine, and she interviewed celebrities on the red carpet. She went on to work for both The Cut and BuzzFeed, and she's currently the author of the newsletter Back Row. Joining her today is the Desert's own Sandy Newton, a TV show host who has a show on KESQ called Desert Chat. So help me in welcoming Amy Odell and Sandy Newton.
Hello, everyone. Hi. Oh, what a great group. Amy and I were backstage, and I said, it's a packed house. And you were like, is it really? I said, are you kidding me? Who doesn't want to know about Anna Wintour, right? Oh, my gosh. And it has been such a pleasure to get to talk to Amy, who, and I must say, I was a little intimidated by what I would wear today, because I consider you also an expert in fashion. So I'm not sure if this hits the mark. You look very chic, but...
You look beautiful.
Thank you. You know, I told Amy earlier that when I read the book, I really sensed her reporting style. She graduated NYU in 3 years, very bright student and engaged in intellectual fashion, I guess you could say, the sort of background of that. But what a person to decide you were going to profile. You told me you spent 3 years.
3 years, yeah. 2 pregnancies, 3 years. it was funny, when I left my last job, Anna actually reached out to me and said, would you meet with me? And I was just saying, that's not every day where you get an email from Anna Wintour. And I was slack-jawed and called my mom and everything. And I took the meeting, and it was really nice, actually. And I was pregnant, and I wasn't looking to take on the kind of job that she wanted me to take on, and I told her that. And she said, ultimately, like, reach out after you have your baby. The day before I went into labor with my son, who's now 4 years old, I got a call from my publisher, Gallery, saying, are you interested in writing a biography about Anna Wintour? And I said, yes, of course I am. And then I did that, and I never reached out to her.
That, that in itself is amazing for a young woman in the industry. She's sort of sacred to so many. Where does that come from when you have that kind of encounter?
Yeah, I did so much research before I met her, the times that I've met her, to know like what she's like, how do you impress her? And I think with the book, like why she's such a compelling subject for a biography is that, despite being in the public eye for as long as she has, and she's been the editor-in-chief of Vogue for 34 years.
It's crazy.
It's an extraordinary tenure for any executive. Jeff Bezos left Amazon after 27. And despite being in this public position for so long, she remains really an enigma. And most people know Anna Wintour from The Devil Wears Prada, from Meryl Streep's famous Miranda Priestley portrayal of her, but that is really a one-dimensional view of a woman who people told me, and I interviewed more than 250 people to write this book, is extremely complicated. And so this book really is about pulling back the layers on who she really is and showing a human side to her that I don't think we've seen before.
So let's dig deep into that, because you really do go through so many layers. I don't know if a lot of the people in the audience know that she started out in a very affluent family in England, had quite a lot of abundance of riches growing up. When you talk to people that knew the early Anna, did they tell you that they had an inkling, she's going to be a superstar? I mean, she's destined. Did people have a kind of a
100%.
Really?
Yeah,
really?
Absolutely. Anna is someone who has always kind of disarmed people. She grew up in London. Her father was a famous newspaper editor on Fleet Street of the Evening Standard. And that was a paper that really mixed the arts and politics and culture. And even though his background was in politics, he served in the military. And he became a political reporter after that. And you may know from your own journalism career, as I do, many men like that, they only care about politics and hard news, and they don't care about anything else. And he was not like that. He really cared about the culture of London. I mean, you think of 1960s London, swinging London, Vidal Sassoon, bob haircuts, mini skirts, boots, and colorful patterned clothing. So Anna came of age in that time, in that place where culture was really coming out of London, the Beatles. And that's what she said inspired her interest in fashion. And her dad took it really seriously. And yes, it was an affluent family. Her mother was a social worker that came from a very wealthy family from Pennsylvania.
So once she kind of made the leap to New York, which was sometimes after she started her career in London, though, did she still possess that kind of, I know in the book you say a lot of it where people were disarmed by her beautiful accent and obviously her confidence. The people that you spoke to, did they agree with that? Did they think that was part of the magic that is Anna?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, she kind of was always a bit of this. I have to say, like, she always wore the sunglasses inside and the bob hair she got as a teenager, and she never changed it. And, while the hair actually distinguishes her now, people who have known her for a long time will say, oh, well, everybody in London had that haircut. But yeah, she would go to work immaculately dressed in full designer clothes. As I said, she had money. She had a trust fund from her mother's side of the family, and that kicked in around the time she started her first magazine job in the early 70s at Harper's and Queen. So she could buy a Mini to drive around London. She could buy, the really cute, cool clothes. And she wore like Missoni every day, the glasses, the hair, everything always perfect. She would go twice a week to get her bangs trimmed at a salon in London. And then she went to New York, so she got fired from her first job, having the privilege that she had. She was able to go to New York, which I think was she knew that that would be necessary for her because she knew from a young age she wanted to take over Vogue. So she was going to have to get to New York to do that, to take over American Vogue. And when she was there, yes, entering the world of American publishing, the offices, she was dressed immaculately with the hair, with the shades, and then she had the accent. And there weren't a lot of Brits in publishing in New York at the time. So it did very much distinguish her and dazzled people. And she was also silent. She was always so quiet. Right. And I think she's kind of like that to this day. Like, you never know what she's thinking. And she's wearing the sunglasses. So she was kind of, like a dazzling enigma. She's kind of always had that effect where, like, she walks into a room and she's not talking, but she's kind of dictating everything that's going on.
Yeah. 3 decades at Vogue is amazing. And I love that they said that she loved the theater, and she would wear her glasses and leave often early. But they said sometimes they think she might have even been asleep. And who would know, right?
So there is a story in the book about the 2 designers behind the label, Proenza Schooler, who Anna championed from around 2001, 2002, something like that. And their earliest interaction actually was encountering Anna on a plane, and she was sitting in first class or business class, and they were sitting in coach. They were like fashion students. And one of them works up the courage to write a note to her on an air sickness, on a barf bag that they give you in the seat back. And he goes up to her, like works up, it takes a lot of guts to go up to Anna Wintour. And he goes up to her and he taps her and just there's nothing, like no reaction, and he keeps tapping her, no reaction. So he puts the note under her drink, and he goes back to his seat in the back of the plane, and he said that she later told him that she was asleep. But she did read the note, sleeping or not. She woke up, she saw the note, and she called Michael Kors and said, give this kid an internship, and he got an internship out of that.
Nice. I know there are a few glimpses of kind of a heartbeat in there, or compassion, or some kind of acknowledgement. When we were having lunch earlier, we were talking about her odd eating habits. So talk to us about the fact that she really consumed very little food, it seems. I know she was small, but really barely enough calories to stay alive.
She's never eaten that much, actually. I don't even talk about her diet that much because I don't want to give, I have so many very young readers, and I don't want to give them ideas, so I want to be clear, I'm not endorsing this diet. But there was a book that she came across in the late 60s or 70s called The Drinking Man's Diet. Has anybody heard of this book? And it was kind of an early low-carb plan where it says the only rule to this diet is to eat, I forget the amount, but a certain number of grams of carbohydrates a day, and that's it. And she's adhered to that. And, it's funny, you write a book like this and you think you have like some really juicy stories and like that, certain things are going to get picked up in the press everywhere. And the thing that got picked up that I never would have guessed, maybe it was the biggest thing that came out of the book, was a lunch order that she had. So if she's having lunch in her office, she typically gets the same thing for a period of time, like, for 5 years she always got this, for 5 years she got that. So for a period of time, she was getting a steak and a caprese salad without the tomatoes from a nearby restaurant in Manhattan, close to her office. And people picked up on that, and it became a viral story. And I was completely shocked, and I had actually two sources on that, so I was not at all, unsure of that. I'm not unsure of any information, but I felt very secure that that was actually her lunch. And then she did recently a video for Vogue.com, I don't know if anybody has seen this series, the 73 questions, where somebody just answers 73 rapid-fire questions. And the interviewer says, Anna, how do you feel about tomatoes or vegetables? And she says, oh, we just planted a tomato garden. And but that definitely seemed to me like a response to the story about her lunch, which people thought was hilarious.
And I thought it was unusual. She played tennis pretty much every morning before she would go to work.
She plays tennis a couple times a week, is my understanding, or she works out with a personal trainer. And she gets up very early, like 4:35, and she does that, and then she goes to work. She takes the car to work, and she has her handbag. We don't normally see her carrying a handbag, but she does have one. And she also has something called the AW bag. And that is a tote bag, an LL Bean tote bag with navy handles, monogrammed with her initials AW. And she gets to work in her chauffeured car, and an assistant comes down and takes the AW bag, so she does not have to carry it up. And the way that was explained to me is, because I thought it was silly that she couldn't carry up her own AW bag. And the way that was explained to me is it's heavy, and people are always staring at her. Well,
in so many of these anecdotal stories about the control that she had, the lunch and the obsession with wearing glasses and the haircut and the bangs every couple of weeks, do you think in part that sort of was a little bit of the secret sauce to her success? Was that, that oddly sort of placed confidence that she never thought, and really very few people ever disparaged her?
Yes, I think her personal brand, for lack of a better term, was a huge part of her success. She started her career in the late 60s, early 70s, and she was coming up in a really feminine field, which was fashion. And so I think, like now when you go to fashion shows, actually, you see people dressed up, like so in such fashion-forward, almost ridiculous-looking outfits. But like when she was starting her career, actually, it was more common, I think, for editors to go kind of just wearing black. Photographers had to carry film. So it wasn't like digital photography where you can just take pictures of whatever you want all the time. Nobody was wasting shots on taking pictures of who was there. Yet she always showed up, turned out, and she always stood out. And I actually have a photo in the book of her at a fashion show for that reason, because the photographer thought that she was just so interesting looking. But I do think that helped her. And then, and I talk in the book about how, like, when she was interviewing for Vogue, for her first job at Vogue, like, she dressed up in the Chanel suit. Like, she always knew what she needed to wear to get what she wanted.
And I think we credit her with the first time fashion really spoke to culture, pop culture, celebrity politics. Hillary Clinton on the cover of Vogue. And some of her relationships with superstars in their field. Talk to us about the relationship with Serena Williams, which seemed so out of nowhere, but they became very good friends. And Serena, you said, even credited her, was it the Wimbledon win? To Anna.
Yeah, so I worked on the book in secret for a while because we didn't know what kind of cooperation, if any, we would get from Anna herself. After about a year or a year and a half, I heard from her office, and they said, "Oh, we heard you're working on a book about Anna." And the result of the conversation was they sent over a list. Her flack said something like, "We'll send over a list of close friends and colleagues for you to interview about her," which was great. And the list was kind of hilarious and extraordinary. It was like Tom Ford, Tory Burch, Serena Williams.
Bradley Cooper?
No Bradley Cooper.
Oh, no, he wasn't on that list.
But just like Stella McCartney. So I thought that was very funny, her close friend, Serena Williams. But I did talk to Serena Williams, and she said that she goes to Anna. And this is really, I think, the source of Anna's power. She goes to Anna for advice on all kinds of things. Everything from men she was dating, now she's married, of course, to tennis. And she said that when she was struggling with tennis at one point, she called Anna. And whatever Anna said, she said she couldn't remember, helped her go on to win Wimbledon.
Wow. Yeah, I obviously we know you would, seek her counsel in fashion, but I can't imagine telling Serena Williams how to play the game of tennis, right?
Right.
And then also her relationship with the Clintons, relationship with the Trumps. Talk to us about those kind of political connections that really brought the entire culture into a different shift for Vogue.
Yeah, well, I open the book with a scene of Anna addressing her staff after the 2016 collection, and her staff, it's a liberal environment in the office of Vogue. Her staff is distraught, very upset that Hillary Clinton lost, and Vogue had really supported Hillary. Vogue had done charity fashion shows. Anna and her have, I think, a friendship, it's safe to say. Anna put Hillary Clinton on Vogue in 1988 in the wake of the Monica Lewinsky scandal. It was the first time a first lady appeared on the cover of Vogue. So they had a long relationship, and Anna tells her staff, this is a hard moment for many of you, but we have to keep moving forward. And that's what she always says, we have to keep moving forward. She doesn't dwell in the past, she just keeps going. And, but then the next thing she did is she goes and she calls Donald Trump and says, you want to come to the office and do a talk with the editors-in-chief? And he does. And I saw a picture of Anna in that meeting, and I will never forget it. She's sitting at the table like so happy to have him there. But, I think that's how she thinks. Like, she knows that these relationships are really important. He hadn't taken office yet. This was before he took office. So his presidency was still an idea. But, people were upset that she did that. People on her staff were upset that she did that.
And isn't it true, I think you said in that first chapter that there might have even been a tear as she talked to her staff?
She had teared up. Yeah, she teared up when she was addressing her staff. One woman who worked for Anna for many years planning the Met Gala actually said she calls it the crackle when Anna chokes up.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the Met Gala, because, of course, that was really nothing until Anna really reinvented it. So how did the people around her that you talked to that were involved in the Met say that she was able to accomplish now an iconic event?
Yeah, I really think now the Met Gala is the Super Bowl of red carpets.
Totally.
It used to be the Oscars. I don't think that's the case anymore. I think the Met Gala absolutely supersedes the Oscars. It's the most important internationally recognized red carpet event of the year, truly. And Anna started planning it in 1995. And at that time, it was really like just a charity fundraiser, kind of quiet, more society-oriented. Now, when you look at the red carpet, it's not like socialites are going up there. I mean, a few still get to go, but and I hear they're upset about it, the ones who don't get to go anymore. But she really turned it into a celebrity spectacle, and she did it honestly through kind of the same way she runs everything, which is very rigid control and down to the details. I talk in the book about how even with the food, which I don't think people really eat the food, but she said for many years, no parsley, chives, onions, garlic in the food because it makes your breath smell and it gets stuck in your teeth. I remember asking the former planner, well, what about fish, because fish could smell. And she said, one year we did a cold lobster salad.
Acquiesce to a little cold lobster. And we can't not talk about the Met and then, of course, not talk about Kim Kardashian and that whole part of her life, and even Kanye, obviously.
You mean how Kim Kardashian managed to get
Yes, because I understand, right, that she was actually kind of forbidden.
Yes. Thank you for asking that. So, yeah, Anna really controls the guest list to the party. And kind of what happens is the planner will write down a list of, 500 to 700 names and take it to Anna, and then they'll just cross off, add names, and keep going until they have like the perfect list. And it's not something you can buy your way into. It's just kind of Anna deciding like who's in and who's not in. The people who are in go to the party and get to represent fashion that night for the public around the world. And Kim Kardashian is someone, well, I think all of them actually, would call the Vogue office. The Hilton sisters would do this too when they were more famous than they are now. But they would call and try to get in. And Anna never let the Hilton sisters in. Nicole Richie is someone who did get to go, who would call and finally did get to go. And then Kim Kardashian, I think, is probably the famous one. And that's still a controversial move. Like, I still see people saying on social media, like, oh, the end of the Met Gala is when Anna invited in Kim Kardashian. But she's been going ever since. And I truly think that this most recent gala, where Kim Kardashian wore the Marilyn Monroe dress, that Marilyn Ward is saying a happy birthday to President Kennedy. She was the most famous person there that night.
Yeah.
That was the highlight of the night. And then, of course, the irony of that is that she's seeming to destroy a historical garment, and the whole point of the night is to raise money to preserve historical garments.
Right. There's something off on that.
But that's also, and I think this is why people kind of struggle to understand Anna, or, don't really know how to view her, because she does things like that. She's full of contradictions, like, aligning with Hillary and then calling Trump and saying, come to our office, and sitting there beaming at him.
And so, speaking of contradictions, you wouldn't think that she would be necessarily a doting mother, now a grandmother, but it appears from everything you've said that she loves the role of being mom and often took time off from work to drive them to sporting events or whatever, and a very doting grandmother. So talk to us about that kind of dichotomy, that we would have assumed she'd be like, that's all, kind of like the Meryl line, with the children, but that she really did cherish that, or does cherish that role.
She does, yeah. I think she loves her children. Whenever they would call, so let me think, how old would they have been? I'm backing up. So she took over Vogue in 1988, so they would have been around 3, 4, 5, I think, between like 3 and 5 when she became editor-in-chief of Vogue. So they were really little. And whenever they called, she would stop what she's doing and take their call. That said, I did have people point out some other things to me that I found to be interesting. Her job requires her to go to fashion shows. The fashion shows last a month at a time, and they happen twice a year. That doesn't even include couture. That's another week, twice a year. So that's 2.5 months kind of minimum that she's away, just going to fashion shows for work. And then someone else told me a story. I think I was asking about her children and like the role of her children in her life, and this woman remembered like her daughter coming in and coloring on the floor on like Take Your Daughter to Work Day, which like imagine your mom's editor-in-chief of Vogue. But then she also remembered Anna would get picked up by her husband in a Land Rover, and they would drive to their estate in Long Island like on a Friday, and he would come and pick her up, kids in the back seat. And Anna would, walk and get in the front seat, sunglasses on, and she was just walking in the front seat, and they would just go. She wouldn't turn around. I think most of us would be like, oh my God, like I missed you. Acknowledge the children in the back seat in some way, and she didn't do that. She would just get in the front seat, sit down, and they would just go.
And let's talk about her role as a wife, because there was a lot of rumors and a lot of gossip that she was kind of very, not promiscuous per se, but that kind of started one relationship while she was still either married or in another relationship.
She did have, she started a relationship while she was with her first husband. Her first husband is a man named David Schaffer, and he was a child psychiatrist. And people actually credited him a lot with helping her with her work at Vogue. He read every single editor's letter. Not that Anna wrote them like a staff member would have been writing them, but he still read them. He would read copy and advise her on it. And people said there would be times when she would come into the office with feedback on something that had clearly come from him. And this lasted, like, they were married 1983 to like 1984 to 2000-ish. So a long time. And then she had an affair with a man named Shelby Bryan.
While she was still married.
For the book, while she was married to David. And that became a huge tabloid, like a sensational tabloid story. Like that's exactly the kind of thing that like New York gossip writers just absolutely love. So that became a very big deal. And she was actually on the cover of New York Magazine for a story about her affair. And amazingly, she was interviewed for this story, and she posed for a photo for the story. And the way they got her to pose for a photo, she's on the cover of the magazine, kind of like this. Like she looks amazing. She looks very strong and in control. And the way they got her to pose is the art director, the photo director called her and said, "Look, it's going to be a shit story. We all know that. All people are going to remember is how you look on the cover. So let us take your picture." Right? And that's how you talk to an editor like Anna, who's a visual editor above all else. And she said, okay.
Wow, wow. Well, and we have to, of course, address Devil Wears Prada, because that was written by one of her assistants, supposedly loosely based on Anna. I just rewatched it for the second time the other night, and it is amazing because, it appears that is exactly what Anna was like, and so how has she reacted to that portrayal, and did she find it, comforting? Did she find it authentic? Did she find it realistic? Was she just freaked out by it?
Yeah, great question. So I did find out, Anna, if you read old interviews with Anna about the book itself, she says, I don't know if I'll read it. Stuff like that. Or I haven't read it. She did read it before it came out, and someone who was working closely with her at the time told me that she wasn't bothered by it at all because she didn't think the writing was good. She didn't think it was a good book. And she said, I cannot remember who that girl is.
We've heard that from some other people, leaders that say the same sort of thing. It's convenient to not remember.
I kind of believe her, though.
Really?
Just based on the way that she treats her assistants. She doesn't, I don't know if this has changed in like the last year or two, but she doesn't learn their names. And you see that in the movie where she calls Andy Emily.
Yes,
Emily,
right.
Until finally she calls her Andy. And people did say that, who had that job, that is real. Like, she doesn't learn your name until she knows you're going to stay, because so many girls come in and flame out. They can't do it, and then they're gone. And it's funny the way people justify Anna's behavior. I think that you could easily say, it's not hard to learn somebody's name and treat them with respect by knowing their name. But they kind of say, well, when so many are in and out, like, I can understand why she wouldn't want to bother learning somebody's name.
So you said you kind of believe it. What, after you distilled everything down after the over 250 interviews, what do you actually believe about Anna? Because she is such an enigma, and there's so much out there. We could pull from any different source and come up with our own concept. But what do you believe now, having done all that amazing research?
I think that she is someone who, she's a human being. Like, everybody is complicated. Everybody makes mistakes. Everyone has good qualities and less good qualities. I ultimately see her as a businesswoman who has been able to be extraordinarily successful because she has been able to make some decisions that I think would be really, really hard for a lot of people to make. Like, you have to be able to fire your friends. Or people say she'll drop you. Like, if you become radioactive to her, she'll just drop you and never talk to you again. She operates in this way, and I think that has enabled her to be so successful. I don't think you can be so successful, if you're letting things like, worrying about firing somebody you need to fire. Like, if you let that get in your way, like, you're not going to be so successful for so long. And I think this is why people are afraid of her, because they know that she's like that. They know that she's going to make the decision that she has to make, putting herself first truly, and putting Vogue first and her company first. And they don't want to be the person who she decides, oh, I don't need that person anymore. Because even if they've worked for her for 20 years, like, the loyalty can run out.
Did you speak to those who'd worked for her for that amount of time, or had been exposed in her kind of orbit for that amount of time?
Yeah. She had a number of close-knit people. I think it's a small group who worked for her for decades, like Grace Coddington, the very well-known fashion editor who, if any of you have seen the Vogue documentary September issue, that's really about their relationship. I spoke to Andre Leon Talley before he died. They worked together since 1983 at Vogue.
And we can talk about the racial issue, too, because she was really at the forefront. Andre, of course, African-American, and she really promoted having Black models, Black photographers, and really made sure that they were progressively, civil-minded, as far as color.
Yeah, she's done that in recent years, but if you look at the Vogue archive, you can see where diversity lies on the pecking order of priorities for her. Vogue has not really been diverse until recent years. And actually, many people I interviewed who worked for her for a long time said that they were shocked that she kind of didn't see that coming as something the audiences really expected and demanded. And I think the shift in media around that really happened with the internet, and we had blogs like Jezebel coming up, and they were challenging women's media, glossy women's media, and pointing out issues relating to race and diversity all the time. So it is a bit puzzling that Anna did not absorb that it didn't, it did not become a priority to her until really the summer of 2020, I think.
Do you think that the reason she's been able to remain so relevant is that she actually creates the relevance and kind of creates that moment and those trends?
I think that she used to do that, absolutely. Like when she put Madonna on the cover for May 1989, and that sounds like, who cares today?
Yeah.
But at the time, it was a really big deal because celebrities were not on fashion magazine covers. And Madonna was very controversial. Like a Prayer had just come out. She had lost, I think, a Pepsi commercial over it. And Anna, she understands, like, coming from that father, from that Fleet Street father, like, understands how the news works. And she's like, oh, this person's a little bit controversial. I want to put them on the cover. That's going to generate conversation and interest. And she was right. And those instincts have been right. Another example of that would be Ivana Trump, who was the first Trump wife to be on the cover. There were two. The second was Melania in 2005. But she had doubts about Ivana, and she asked an editor on her team, she said, do you think it's too tacky to put her on the cover? And he said, go for it, and she did it, and the issue sold really well.
It's interesting to hear you say, and you say in the book, that she asked people things, because I presumed that she probably didn't really welcome a lot of, opinions, that she really...
She does from certain people at certain times, and there have been times where she absolutely should have listened to her staff, and they would have kept her out of trouble. One example of that would be the Gisele Bündchen, who's very much in the news today, and LeBron James cover, where he's kind of got his arm around her, and she's wearing like a green silky slip dress, and I think he has a basketball, and his teeth are showing, and people thought that cover was a racial trope, and they likened it to images of King Kong, and were very upset by it. And Anna's team told her, I found out in reporting this book, Anna's team told her that people were going to say that, and that she shouldn't use that picture. And she didn't see it, and she went with her own gut, and she made her own decision, and that issue was still is very controversial to this day.
Yeah.
And then the other example of that of her not listening to her team is when Vogue profiled the Syrian First Lady, I can't remember the exact year, I think it was around 2011 or 2013. They profiled the Syrian First Lady. It was a puff piece. And, it said things like her husband won with 99% of the vote. Well, he's a dictator. And people in the office told her this, that you cannot run this story. And Anna ran the story because she liked the picture of the Syrian First Lady. She's sort of standing on a vista overlooking Damascus with a magenta shawl wrapped around her. And Anna just loved the picture. She edits by picture, really, before words. And she didn't listen to them, and it was, I think, maybe that was the biggest controversy in her tenure, aside from the summer of 2020 when everyone thought she should quit.
And it is, at the end you say that she, when all is said and done, she does not want to be remembered as this fashion icon, that she wants to be remembered for her philanthropy. And do we really even have a concept of her philanthropy? I mean, is that so much a part of her? I wouldn't come to mind with when I'm thinking of her.
So yeah, she does want to be remembered for her philanthropy. The biggest example of that is the Met Gala, which raises money for the Costume Institute, which is a division of the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York that preserves historical costume, gowns, fashion. And they do have the best collection in the world. And preserving clothing is expensive, and it's unlike preserving other kinds of art. Like a painting, you can kind of hang on the wall and leave it there. And in costume, you can't do that. Like, you can only leave it out for a certain amount of time, then you got to put it away. Like, you can't have light on it. So it is an expensive endeavor. And she's raised more than $250 million for it.
Wow. Wow.
And that would be her biggest charitable endeavor. She's also raised money for breast cancer, youth mental health, and AIDS. Yeah. In the 90s, the AIDS was her big cause. Mm-hmm. And I talk about that in the book and how that kind of segued into the Met Gala, the events that she did around AIDS. But that I do not believe that will be her legacy. I think people are going to remember her for, for this, like for her image, being the lady with the sunglasses and the hair, and also her behavior, the way she treats people, and the controversy.
And, I think she has said that famous line with Meryl Streep saying, "That's all," that wasn't something she ever said. And so talk to us about that, because I think Meryl Streep even kind of credited it with saying, well, I think someone said that was how dismissive she was of people.
She is dismissive of people. It's so funny. So many people ask if she really says that's all. So Meryl Streep has said that she based that character off of Clint Eastwood and Mike Nichols, the director Mike Nichols, who are like soft-spoken kind of guys, I guess. And no, the way I would explain it, like Anna, no, nobody said she says that's all. That's not like a thing that she does. She doesn't have time to say that's all.
So after 3 years of research, over 250 people that you've interviewed, what could you not put in the book? Can you share that with us? Is there some dish there that you could not put in the book?
There may have been, and I wouldn't say it, if there was information I couldn't verify, it wouldn't have gone in the book. But I'm not going to say that because that's not what a responsible journalist would do. But, I actually wrote, I had a word limit of 90,000, I think, 80 to 90,000. I filed 130 or 40, and my editor was like, no. So I worked with an editor to cut it down and get it in, the shape that it's in today. It ended up coming in around 110,000, I guess.
So what were some of those stories you cut out?
So like one story I cut out, it was actually a food story. An editor described starting at Vogue, and Anna is famous for always having the door open in her office. And like if the door is closed, people are like, what is happening? So she has the door open and she's sitting there eating a hamburger with two hands. And he's like, what the hell? I'm just going to go in there and sit down and tell her some ideas. So he goes and he sits down and he starts going down his list of ideas. And he has like 10 ideas, and she says, no, 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 no to all of the ideas. So there were some scenes like that I had to take out.
Yeah, and have you heard what she thinks of this, similar to Devil Wears Prada, what her opinion of your book is?
I have not heard from her, no. I can only venture to guess what she thinks of it.
Well, and would she, knowing kind of as I grew to know her with your expert writing, I don't think, she would let you know. Maybe her very, very inner circle might know, but she is and remains such an enigma that I think that would be giving you too much credit to say, I loved it, or, oh my God, that was so perfect. I think she would prefer to just let it, pass without any comment.
Yeah, she didn't have any reaction really to the Devil Wears Prada book or film either, I think. Mm-hmm. Although she did get invited to a Devil Wears Prada screening, and she showed up wearing Prada.
And I understand she bought her wedding dress off the sale rack at Bergdorf's, right?
Yes, she did. I love that story. So Andre Leontali actually had said that she had to get a friend to get her Chanel clothes that she wore at her wedding, which was a small, very tasteful affair in the bottom of her new townhouse. And she wore two Chanel dresses, one for the ceremony that she changed into something she was going to wear on the honeymoon. And Andre believed that only this close friend that had a relationship with Karl Lagerfeld could get her those clothes. And that was the story that had been told in the press about her Chanel clothes. And then I found out that what actually happened is she went to Bergdorf and she bought them off the sale rack. So he was mistaken.
She's just like us, right? Yeah. Amy, thank you so much for such a wonderful, really writing such a wonderful book, and all of you are going to enjoy it so much. Please join me in thanking Anna. The quintessential book on someone who, I think when you're through reading it, you'll think you know her a little better, but then you close it and you go, but do I really? And I think that's really to your credit, because you told so much about her and you had so much information, and yet we still walk away going, who is she and what is she all about? Would we be friends? Would she approve? So job well done. I know you're working on your third novel.
I have, yes.
Yes.
Something else.
And I think, do we, Debbie, have time for questions?
Do we have any questions from the audience?
Kind of hard for us to see. Anyone have any
Susan Stein.
questions?
Hi, I have a question that's burning in my head. If she were a man, okay, and this is not the way to approach this, do you think that many of these reactions that people have to her or terror that she causes would happen if she were a man?
No. I mean...
Oh, interesting, yeah.
I don't know. Have you guys been reading about Elon Musk going into Twitter with his... I mean,
Right.
Can you imagine if Anna did that? No, and a lot of people made a point of saying that like, if she were a man, we wouldn't even be talking about, does she say that's all, or does she remember her assistants' names and stuff like that. I think there is definitely something to that, yeah.
And her father's influence, I think, had a lot of effect on her behavior, I believe.
Yeah, so her father, actually, people who knew both of them said that she's very, very much like her father. Like, he was also really scary. Like, people who worked for him respected him so much and admired him so much. I find this to be true of the people I spoke to who worked for Anna. So much respect and admiration and warm feelings, but also fear.
And one thing Amy was saying to me backstage, we were talking about her editor, and she said the one thing my editor said is don't use the word scary. Don't say she's scary. That would turn people off. But in fact, I think that really is kind of intriguing. You kind of know that, well, that might be scary, but not in a horrible way, more just that you kind of in some way oddly respect the ability to be so successful in a man's world, basically.
Do you think that she will retire anytime soon? And if she chooses to, I assume she'd choose, do you think that she'd choose her successor, and how would she do that?
That's the big question about Anna right now. So I did ask her people who are very close to her, what are her plans? She can't run Vogue forever.
She's 76, right? 77?
She turned 73 on November 3rd.
Oh, okay. Oh,
In
next
days.
week is her birthday, yeah.
She's a Scorpio. And her friends said, she doesn't talk about her plans. They assume that she has plans. The only thing she has said is maybe she will charge for all the advice she gives, like to Serena Williams or like business leaders, heads of fashion houses who say, I need a new designer, who should I hire? She says, maybe I'll charge for that advice instead of giving it away for free. But she really, I think this is another reason she's been so successful. She doesn't talk about herself. And so when she was promoted in 2013, I think it was from just being editor-in-chief of Vogue to head of all Condé Nast magazines, a role, I think her title was artistic director, and it's changed since. Her best friend found out about it in the newspaper.
Wow.
So she really doesn't talk about herself. Yeah, and will she pick her successor? I don't know. I think she could. I think it's likely she would try to do that.
Mm-hmm. And B, her daughter has no aspirations to follow necessarily in those footsteps.
Hi, excuse me. I just saw a documentary on Diana Vreeland, and I was wondering, because Diana Vreeland was a totally different fashion icon than Anna. And then I found out that Diana Vreeland started the Met Institute. But what was her relationship like with Deanna Vreeland? Because I couldn't picture them being friends or colleagues.
Yeah, I think they worked like a little bit together. I know when Anna was creative director of Vogue in 1983 to 1985, somewhere in that window, she, for instance, did a story for Vogue that had to do with Deanna Vreeland, who was running the Costume Institute and the Met Gala, and Anna would go to it. It was called the Party of the Year at that time, and Anna would be a guest, and you'd often see her picture, as someone who was there. So I would say they probably had like a cordial professional relationship. But Deanna Vreeland's relationship with the Costume Institute was really different because she was actually doing the exhibits, and Anna's just doing the fundraising.
I've got two questions. The first one is I'd like to know your process of how you started the research. What did you start with? Where did it lead you? How did it shape the book? And then the second one is, did you talk with Anna about her support of controversial designers like John Galliano and his anti-Semitism remarks, and Karl Lagerfeld and his fat phobia?
So to answer the first part of your question, I think my process really began with a lot of people telling me to get lost and hanging up the phone on me. I don't want to tell you the boring parts, but it's like you read archives, you make a source list, and then you start calling. You have to do a lot of cold calling, hoping you get people on the phone who'll just start talking and not overthink it. But a lot of people were very nervous to talk, and I had, a month at least, I remember, go by at one point where nobody was talking to me, and I was like, oh my God, how am I going to get this done? But what I did was I went back to the beginning of her life, and I started talking to people who knew her from way back, and they were more open to talking. So then I actually started getting material. And then after she sort of, indicated her support by sending people like Tom Ford and, her friends, her personal friends my way to talk to. And that list of names, I don't know, maybe it was a dozen people. And then I asked, would it be okay if I talked to these people? Some people said, I'll do it if she says it's okay. So I was able to get permission. She didn't say no to anybody. And then regarding her support for controversial designers. So I do think that the Karl Lagerfeld, the Met is doing its next exhibit on Karl Lagerfeld, who died in 2019. And yes, he was known for making some disdainful remarks about fat women and about women in general and Syrian immigrants, notably. And I do think that it will be interesting to see how that unfolds. I feel perplexed at that choice being made at this moment in time when people are so aware of, acceptance in the fashion industry and expect that a lot more than ever before. I think it's a perplexing choice for the time. The exhibit, as far as I've read, I don't know that they're going to address that he said those things. I imagine it won't because it's being sponsored by Chanel and Fendi. And I don't think they're going to want that to be part of the exhibit, just guessing. But I do think the celebrities, what I'm looking for is which celebrities are going to go, and which celebrities are going to use it to make a statement about him and what we expect from our icons today. Because I do think celebrities are going to be in a difficult position going, because if they go, it looks like they support it, and then they're going to have to be able to explain why.
Does Anna have a stylist?
Such a good question. She doesn't really. For many years, it was Andre Leon Talley, who passed away not too long ago, who would help her with her Chanel Couture.
Also, how does she pack if she goes away for a month?
With trunks of Louis Vuitton.
Ladies and gentlemen, please help me thank Amy Odell and Sandy Newton once again.
So good, so good.
That was really good.
You were really good.
you.